Hey guys, we're back again this week looking at another aircraft kit. This time we'll be looking at one of Eduard's older releases with their 1/48 scale Il-2M Shturmovik. Now, this is technically one of their profit kits. However, this is a much older release and unfortunately does not have quite the same, level of added bits that more modern ones have. So let's open her on up and take a look. So we will start out today first with two of our wing halves and very high quality surface detailing, lots of finely engraved panel lines, all going to be built out to excellent levels of detail. Much the same here on the lower sprues, though they do include the mounts for the rockets pre-drilled. So that's both good and bad. Bad in that if you decide not to use the rockets, you're going to have to more than likely fill those. If you are using the rockets, it's great. It means you can just straight up attach them without any issues. Again, much the same detailing as on the upper surface. We're all very nicely done. Moving on. Now move on to our fuselage halves, which encompass the majority of this sprue. In terms of added cockpit detailing, there is some, though it is a little sparse, but it will more than likely be adequate for most modelers, even without the included photo etch. We do have 4 rockets on this sprue. The level detail is alright. Biggest complaint would be the spinners on the front are just singular discs. Been nice had they added a little detail. As for the rear gunner's machine gun, it's passable for the scale. I don't have any real complaints there. A couple of bulkhead and detail pieces round out the sprue. Continuing on, we've got some additional detail parts as well as our tail gear and a couple of hoods. Overall, not a whole lot there. Moving on now, we start to get into the landing gear and various other bays that go into this kit, as well as some of the control systems for the cockpit. Overall detail here is more than sufficient. Now, as a bit of an oddity, here on the main gear, they molded in the center brace. My best guess is they did this in an effort to try to help stabilize the part so that it wasn't damaged prior to assembly. To me, this is just probably one of the oddest things to do, as you'll see later when we get to the instruction sheet. They have you trim this off. So just a bit of an odd arrangement there. But overall, landing gear themselves are quite nice and no complaints. Next up, we've got our horizontal control surfaces, the center wing section, which does include the closed bomb bays, as this kit does not include any options to open these up, which is a little unfortunate. We've got 2 different options for the wheels, either rounded off or weighted, which is a nice inclusion by themselves, as you don't typically get options to do one or the other. So good on Eduard for including these as an additional option. All right. Moving on, we now have a couple external bombs as an option, the prop, as well as the main gear bays, which they did as this 2-piece assembly. Personally, I think that will definitely add to the difficulty of cleanup, just because getting those aligned correctly will be a little bit of a challenge. Only decent complaint I have here is the exhausts. They're done sealed, and hopefully this will show up on the camera. So you'd either have to open these up or replace them with an aftermarket. Cowling for the front of the engine is nice. More than adequately detailed. Look good once you get it on. Last sprue, we've got our clear parts, including the instrument panel, front windscreen, mid cockpit cover, mid cover, and the optional tail gunner cover. So that is something to be aware of. Depending on which exact option you're going to go with, you'll need to make sure you clip out the right parts. Overall, the clear parts, no real issues that I can find. Now, as I said, the kit does include a fret of photo etch. However, it mainly just deals with the cockpit, as this was a much earlier release from Edwards. You don't get the same, quantity of photo etch that you would get with more recent release. Though I am more than happy with what they do include, and I would actually argue that this amount is probably a good starter amount for someone who's wanting to take the jump to a more complicated aircraft build. Start obviously in the cockpit where a lot of the detail will be beneficial. Last inclusion is a sheet of masks, typical Edwards. I really don't think I need to say too much there. All right. Now, moving on to the marking sheets. So I say you get plenty of red Russian stars. I would almost argue an excessive amount. I do believe they could potentially have, been a little smarter with their marking option choices, gone with some so they could reuse some decals or potentially allow for additional stuff to be added, but that's a bit of a nitpick. Overall, especially the reds come out very nice. The only issue I could find was here on this little medallion. I'm not sure if that's supposed to be white or metallic. Depending on how the light hits it, it's started playing a little tricks with my eye. So something to be aware of. Beyond that, I have found no issues. Overall, typical quality there. Now, moving on to our instructions. Unfortunately, they did not give us options for this white aircraft, and we'll see once we get into the marking options later. Overall, it simply starts here in the cockpit sidewalls for building up, and interestingly enough, assembling two fuselage halves first before you add in the cockpit. It then proceeds to the cockpit, building that up, building up the cowling, and then attaching cowling on and attaching the cockpit instantly to the bottom fuselage or bottom wing half. And then building things up from there, attaching the wings, and then getting landing gear and everything together. Ending, obviously, attaching canopies and whatnot. So overall, there is a fair bit of complexity to this kit build. Definitely not one you're going to be able to, shake and bake. This is one you're going to need to study instructions and plan out every sort of move and pay attention because it's going to be easy enough to miss something. Now, as for marking options, they give you several different options. Majority are in the two-tone color scheme of early 43, including one later scheme and one field retouched. So overall, I do have to say this kit is, I believe, one of the, if not the oldest Edward kit I own. So I've had this for quite a while. I've got to say, it's an interesting mix. It is definitely a more complex kit, but there's still some things that keep it from getting too out of control. So I would say this is one to consider if you're looking to, step up to the next level. It's not a beginner kit by any stretch of the means, but it's not so overly difficult you're going to be tearing your hair out if you're not prepared. Granted, it would be nice if they had included a little extra photo etch, but it's a decent amount. So, would I say pick it up? Yeah. It's an interesting little bird. Doubly so if you're into Russian aircraft. But even if you're not, it's being one to build just as a change of pace. So that was a look at Eduard's 1/48 scale Il-2M Shturmovik in Profit Boxing. Older kit with some nice additions. Could be more, but, still a good kit. So until next time.